Our next speaker is Benjamin Wiggins. Benjamin Wiggins is the Director of Digital Learning Initiatives and Online Pedagogies at the University of Pennsylvania. He teaches in Penn's Department of History and Department of History and Sociology of Science. His work has appeared in Black Camera Television and New Media, New Hazards Observer, and The American Historian. He has contributed to volumes from Intellect, the University of Chicago Press, and Johns Hopkins University Press. Currently, Benjamin is preparing a manuscript entitled Managing Risk, Managing Race, the Racialization of Actuarial Science in the United States, 1881 to 1948, which investigates how insurers and the United States government relied on the supposed neutrality of actuarial science to justify racially discriminatory risk management policies. Benjamin's talk is titled On Specializations, the Role of the Humanities, and the Future of MOOCs.
Thanks for that introduction. And everybody hear me okay? Okay. I'm a little under the weather, so hopefully my voice holds out for the whole presentation. Okay. Thanks first off to everyone at Dartmouth here, especially Jed for the invitation. It's really wonderful to be here and to hear so much about these other, the struggles, the love for MOOCs, the critical aspects of these things. So it's a really positive place to be right now. What I want to talk about today is specialization, and again, another thank you to Jed for letting me be fairly critical of this and taking that perspective. So over the last year, the platforms that host massive open online courses have finally answered that million-dollar question: how will these free courses make money? In a word, certificates. So, of course, paid certificates that verify a learner's identity and certify the learner's accomplishments have been in the MOOCs since they began to proliferate in 2012. So why all of a sudden are these certificates so important to the financial model of MOOCs? Well, in another word, specializations. Specializations are a series of courses that approximate a sort of mini major. I will restrict the majority of my comments today to Coursera, but edX has quite a similar program called Series. FutureLearn, in the partnership with BBC, is now offering what they term a collection. And in fact, the grouping of courses in such a fashion has proved so popular that, and so lucrative, that one of the first generations of MOOC platforms, Udacity, has forsaken the first O of MOOCs and moved entirely to a closed for-fee set of nano-degree offerings. With the exception of Udacity's movement away from the openness, it's difficult to take issue with these specializations. I here use Coursera's term to kind of stand in for sequential organizations of courses in general. There's nothing on its face wrong with the grouping of related courses together. Indeed, specializations are quite a positive development for MOOCs. They encourage the engagement in a topic, they encourage mastery of a discipline or a field through collaborative, project-based learning with capstones at the end of each series. Moreover, they help to solve the skin in the game problem that has plagued MOOCs with low retention rates from their beginnings. By offering a second-order certificate, a sort of series certificate on top of the regular course certificate, these specializations provide students with an additional incentive to complete each course and really an incentive to take a greater volume of MOOCs. Completion and engagement rates rise consistently and considerably when students purchase verified certificates. Tying together courses as specializations do not only makes MOOCs providers and universities money, but more importantly creates invested learners. Learners who intent learners who raise the level of discussion that make a stronger learning community. Though few people point it out, we already know how to raise completion rates from the abysmal to the somewhat respectable. What does it take? It seems about $50 to $100. Or alternatively, enough investment or enough initiative on the learner's part that they can complete the application for financial aid, which gives them the opportunity to earn a verified certificate for free. But all of the positive aspects of specialization, but for all of those positive aspects, today I want to discuss their shortcomings, perhaps even their fatal flaws. While I find myself in the thick of digital learning, the digital learning world, working with physicians and mathematicians as much as I work with literature faculty and philosophers, I'm at heart a humanist. I teach and research in the discipline of history, and I come from the field of American studies. I note this not simply because I care for the field that I come from, but because the humanities challenges all of its students to critically investigate the structures of power and challenge the structures of power in the social world, even higher education itself. And so when I think critically of specializations, they give me great pause. In this talk, I want to posit two issues that need to be given greater consideration before higher education embraces this new direction in open online courses. I want to begin first with the issue of the humanities' place in specialization, by considering that currently they have no place. Secondly, I want to raise the issue that should the humanities find a niche in the ecosystem of specializations, the field will have to carefully consider the conditions of labor under which it functions. Finally, I'd like to finish with a call to action, an ethical challenge that helps to set a sustainable course for the humanities in the burgeoning world of specializations and for specializations no matter the discipline. Okay, I'd like to begin my consideration of the humanities specializations with a look at the current state of these new series. Specializations, in a way, began at my institution. The first one was not referred to as such, but when our business school, Wharton, crafted a MOOC for the core MBA MOOCs for each of the core MBA curriculum topics, a de facto specialization was born, and now it is a formal specialization. Unfortunately, as specializations proliferated, the initial subject matter seemed to dictate the direction of these groupings. Coursera formalized these serial offerings, and the first wave was heavy on business, with a little bit of applied mathematics and computer science sprinkled in. As the offerings proliferated and other platforms and universities entered the field, specializations came to include about a dozen sciences, mostly applied, and eventually a couple education series, one music series, 2 social science series, and to date, of the 85 specializations that we have identified in our internal documentation of this stuff, there are only 2 that could reasonably be seen as in the humanities. Visualizing Japan from Harvard, and Columbia's The Civil War and Reconstruction. And that's it. Clearly the humanities are not interested in, not encouraged to be involved in, or discouraged from trying specializations. I think it's a bit of all 3. So let's consider these one at a time. First off, let's give some weight to the idea that the humanities are not interested in specializations. There's a very difficult thing that's a difficult thing to evaluate here, but it's not unreasonable. There are many great, massive open online courses, humanities courses, but perhaps the idea of a serial form is of little interest to humanist faculty. I think my fellow panelists and presenters can offer a first-hand perspective here. Perhaps this is the case, I'm not sure. But let's bracket that unknowable hypothesis for a moment and consider the possibility that faculty and administrators have thus far not actively been encouraged to produce humanities specializations. This we can know a bit. After the first wave of specializations proved immensely successful both in terms of general enrollments and paid enrollments, Johns Hopkins actually publicly reported a $700,000 a month gross on their data science specialization. That's just one single specialization. Coursera decided we're going to distribute RFPs for these in-demand topics. And so far, in the 2 major rounds of funding offers, there has yet to be a single solicitation for a humanities specialization. Humanities specialization not being encouraged is one thing, but actively discouraging them is quite another. Since this whole great MOOC experiment began, universities and faculty possessed full autonomy in the selection of the courses that they chose to produce. With specializations, however, university autonomy is threatened. With specializations, and here I'm really referring to the Coursera specializations program, a MOOC evaluates, or a MOOC provider evaluates the courses and accepts or rejects them based on factors such as marketability. So since specializations must now be approved by an external organization, notably a venture capitalist funded for-profit one, and since the external organization has repeatedly shown no interest in fostering the development of humanities specialization, there's at least a tacit discouragement that one day could result in an outright rejection. Now, to be fair, at Coursera's latest conference, I publicly asked them about this, and they did display in that public forum an openness to development of humanities specializations, but that was 8 months ago, and in that time they've managed to build this approval scaffolding and also release 2 humanities lists RFPs. So in the face of soaring interest in specializations and a seeming disinterest in developing humanities specializations, what is to be done? For one thing, we can start to speak the language of the market. We can speak to our administrators and to our platform executives about the misperceptions of the value of humanities degrees. Humanities degrees, after all, are more valuable degrees in the long run. They take time to manifest their earning potential, but they can outpace STEM degrees over time. They're also quite desirable to law schools, business schools, and medical schools. They provide, but the providers will at least retort, yes, there may be value there, but humanities courses they do continue to enroll well, but they're not the courses that learners pay for certification in. This is a bit misleading though, as learners have only now 2 options to pay for specializations in the humanities. Is this an issue they won't pay, or is this an issue there's no offerings to pay for? Okay. But speaking the language of the market is a certain form of acquiescence and to its purported demands, right? So we'll have to kind of bracket this there. But before we'll have to keep thinking here. But before we do that, let's imagine that we were to break down the barriers to humanities specializations. So if, or hopefully once, we solve the issue of how to foster the development of humanities MOOC specializations, the hard work begins. As I mentioned in my introduction, there is much to like about specializations. They encourage lasting engagement and retention. They add a new layer of certification for a comparatively low cost, and they make universities money, helping to subsidize that direct cost of this grand experiment in teaching and learning at scale. However, as MOOCs use specializations to become profitable, no small part of this profitability has come on the back of students' labor. How? Well, specializations are not only unique in their serializing of courses, but also in their addition of a capstone. These capstone courses are closed courses that require not only the prerequisite of paid certificates in each of the other courses in the series, but also an additional fee for the capstone course itself, occasionally double or triple the price of the rest of the courses in the series. And there's no auditing of this capstone, meaning that you are required to pay for it too. The fees to access the capstone shift the specialization from a fully open MOOC to an open enrollment course in which you can play if you can pay. What I want to take issue here with is not the cost of these capstone courses or even the fact that they're more akin to closed courses than open ones. The issue here is that humanists need to consider is how heavily these courses rely on peer review. This is a really good thing. I mean, peer review is essential to humanities instruction in many classrooms, and it's worked fairly well in MOOCs too. I'm not saying that peer review is ineffective in MOOCs. Research projects from the University of Colorado, among other institutions, have shown that peer review can be designed in a way that almost exactly approximate expert feedback. And at Penn, we've worked really hard on designing peer review systems that we think we have a lot of confidence in. They actually use the pedagogies of Jacques Rancière, an unexpected ally, but to great effect. The issue with peer review in capstones is that universities and platforms are charging students to give feedback to other students. And peer reflection can be valuable, but when fees are prerequisite, when passing depends on giving these reflections, then, and when no expert feedback is guaranteed, the rules of the game have changed. The ethics of the situation become somewhat compromised. Can they be redeemed to the point where humanities even want to be in this space? Yes, I do think so. The humanities enter the world, as the humanities enter the world of specializations, they should not eliminate peer reflection. Peer reflection encourages community in a project-based learning environment with cohort organization. Students will likely reflect on their peers anyway for free. That sort of affective engagement emerges in the best cohort-based MOOC communities. Our Modern and Contemporary American Poetry course from Al Filreis, even if he were to drop tomorrow the requirement that students peer review, there's such community engagement in there that they would continue doing a very similar reflection on their peers because they're so invested in it, even without any monetary or requirement imperatives. If you don't have a course, but there are other options to improve the bargain of capstone or project-based capstone learning. Okay, so one direction to move in is the reestablishment of expert feedback. Students pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to, excuse me one second. Students pay hundreds of thousands of dollars and really go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt to learn from faculty and their assistants. By offering the promise of faculty and or TA feedback at the cost of $500 or $700, that is the typical charge of a capstone, this becomes pretty palatable for students and justifiable for universities. I know it seems impossible, but MOOC enrollees are not MOOC completers, and much less series completers. So even when the enrollment numbers are in the tens of thousands, only thousands pay for the verified certificates, and only hundreds pass all of the verified certificate courses and then advance to the capstone each time it's offered. So this is what we're doing with our courses. And so in the Wharton Business Foundation's MOOC, if you do sign up for the capstone, if you sign up for the whole series, make it into the capstone, you're either going to get feedback from a Wharton faculty member or one of their teaching assistants. So this is one route to go. Another way universities can better treat MOOC students in these specializations is by offering potentially partial refunds for participation, free future course credits, exclusive one-on-one small group time with faculty, some other fashion of attempting to recognize the productivity of their learning labor with a fair form of compensation. I'm less clear about how this might work, and there's many technological challenges here with the platforms being able to implement such designs. But it might be a topic for discussion in our commentary today. I'd like to end today with a brief anecdote that, at first is going to seem fairly unrelated to all of my concerns here, but I swear it'll circle back. So recently, in speaking with a person that praised our MOOCs, they praised it, but they said that there was a lack of cohesion in our catalog, that our catalog was of a good quality, but it seemed quite idiosyncratic. Wouldn't it be helpful to have a centralized, coordinated strategy, he asked. And I said, oh, but we do. Now, that philosophy of social norms course we're working on, that ancient Egypt MOOC we're nearly done with, that Virgil course we just started, all of these courses were very carefully considered and deemed in line with our Provost central strategy. Each course was evaluated with the most strategic goal for MOOCs in mind, that these courses produce meaningful improvements to campus education. And yes, we started this whole MOOC experience, and here to the we, I mean all the universities, all our partner institutions on Coursera and edX, We started this to teach the world, but we also realized it was expensive. We began looking for ways to make production at least sustainable. And though MOOC specializations provide providers or platforms with a model for sustainability and profitability, nearly a year before they found that model, we found ours. If each MOOC feeds back into teaching and learning at Penn, then it more than pays for its return on investment. To the outsider looking in, it seems like our MOOCs displayed here, just a random collection of courses. You see social entrepreneurship, poetry, health policy, accounting, legal and political philosophy, pharmacology, and it goes on. To an outsider, it seems highly idiosyncratic, but there's a deep intentionality in each course in the way it was approved. And in some way, they all improve the pedagogies of our faculty and the learning experience of our students. And when we justify our costs in this way, it gives the freedom to produce humanities MOOCs, just as much as business MOOCs or computer science MOOCs. And here I mean series and specializations. We are not driven by the demand of the market, we are driven by our students. This solves our problem of how to justify the expenses and how to make humanities MOOCs. But it does little to satisfy the platforms, and that's a larger issue that I and Penn and any single individual institution cannot solve. But I think a good bit of agitation is in order. Just as scholars in the humanities during the first wave of ex-MOOCs publicly thought through concerns of super professors, the dominance of elite universities, the adjacent administrative bloat, and just expense in general, the humanists should again lobby for representation and for an ethical politics of student labor in this era of serialization. Thank you.